We are going to get started a few minutes early since we are full. But I'm Kylie Alfano, and I'm the HR Operations Manager at Tableau. At Tableau, I run compensation and benefits, as well as reporting and analytics for both the HR and recruiting teams. I hope you've all had a great time so far at conference. I'm looking forward to showing you the ways that we use Tableau on our HR and recruiting teams to support our people. I love working with our product every day. Not only does it save me an amazing amount of time, but I'm able to be a better strategic business partner to Tableau. Our product has enabled me and Tableau to make better informed decisions about our people. Companies have a lot of data, and rarely is that data all in one system. I imagine many of you are in the HR field or support the HR field and are asked questions like, what's your active headcount, and how does that compare to budget? What's your year-to-date turnover, and how does that compare to previous years? And you spend your day pulling data from different data sources, validating to make sure that it's correct, and before you know it, a good amount of your day is gone. Well, the value of Tableau is once you create these dashboards, you can see and understand your data. Let me show you how. The first topic that I'm going to cover is how we use Tableau to track and forecast our headcount. A moment ago, I asked the question, what's your active headcount and how does that compare to budget? Well, that was one of the first and most common questions asked when I joined Tableau, which led to a dashboard that we still use today. That dashboard led to many more questions, and through the use of Tableau, we've changed the way that we support our people from recruiting to compensation and benefits, performance assessments, and turnover. I'll also talk at the end about how we connect to our data, as well as permissions and security. Please write down any questions that you have. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. And I'd also like to point out before I get started that although these first two slides have looked static, this is actually a Tableau workbook, and I'll be showing dashboards through our Story Points feature. All right, big disclaimer here. This is not our actual data. I think everyone here is aware that HR data is highly sensitive and confidential, so this is not our data. It's scrubbed. So don't focus in on the numbers, the labels, the axes. Focus in on the concepts behind each one of these dashboards and the questions and answers that come from each one of them. So this is our global headcount report dashboard. The goal of this dashboard is to understand how our active headcount compares to our budget. So let me orient you to this dashboard. On the far left, this text represents our individual departments. For each of these departments, the gray bars here represent our year-to-date terminations. The darker blue bars represent our active headcount. The light blue represent our pending, and the green are our open. These little dashed lines to the right of each of the darker blue lines is our budget. So how is this dashboard used? Let's say that you are the head of the sales department, so you would filter down to just sales, and you can see that you have 5 departments under you. So let's start at the top with sales. You have 2 terms year to date, active of 10 versus a budget of 25. So within the quarter, you have 15 positions to fill to be on track to hit your budget. But what you'll notice is that you don't have any pending, and you only have 2 open. So in this case, you don't have enough pending starts or open positions to be able to close that gap. So when we see something like that, or this, the head of sales would maybe go to FP&A or finance or another group, kind of whoever manages your headcount, and ask that next set of questions, like, what do I need to do to open those positions? You know, are you waiting on me for anything? Have they been reallocated? So you can ask those questions to make sure that you get back on track to hit your budget. Another example would be if you're looking at the enterprise line here, where you've had 5 terms year to date, your active headcount is 124 versus a budget of 150. So here you have 26 positions to fill, but you have enough open positions in this case to close that gap. and you do have 3 pending starts. So the next question might be, well, what are those 26 open positions? So rather than leave Tableau and go into another system to look up that question, we a lot of times build in these action items. So in this case, you can see that blue hyperlink there has that open position detail. So when I click on it, it's going to take me to those 26 open positions. So this is a cross tab detailing out where those 26 positions are located, who the hiring managers are, et cetera. So in this case, you might take the next action of sending an email to these hiring managers, letting them know that it's a priority to make sure these positions are filled by the end of the quarter. So another thing that I'd like to point out with this dashboard is, although it looks really seamless, this data is coming from different data sources. So we use Workday for our HRIS system, and we use Tableau for our applicant tracking system. So once again, rather than going into multiple systems to be able to ask and answer these questions, you can see it all with one dashboard. Tableau and Workday is our current platform. I imagine many of you guys are using other systems, but I want you to think about Tableau being that HR platform that allows you to pull data from multiple systems to create dashboards that you're able to ask questions and be able to quickly see the answers to them. So this dashboard had a lot of detail. There was a lot of text, a lot of bars. And so the next question was, well, what's your overall forecast for the quarter? So that led us to build our recruiting forecast report. Let me orient you to this report. So focusing in on the top total bar chart on the top, each one of these blue bars represents our net new hires per week, and the orange represent our capacity or our forecast. We build our forecast based off of historical averages as well as the current capacity of the recruiting team. The blue line here represents our headcount per week, and this reference line up here represents our budget. So what you can see in this top graph is that the average net new hires per week of 10 is under the capacity of 14, which is why it looks like you're going to come in slightly under budget. So in this case, the next question might be, well, is there one business unit? Are there multiple business units contributing to this forecast? And what you can see as we look at the detail in the 4 graphs below is that for sales, marketing, and operations, the average is very close to the capacity. So these are going to come, or is forecasted to come in really close to budget by the end of the quarter. If we were to focus in on development, you can see that their average of 2 is under their capacity of 5. So in this case, they're going to come in under budget, and is likely the reason why the entire company is going to come in under budget. So when we see things like this, we can ask that next set of questions, like have they had more terminations than expected? Do they not have enough open positions? For their open positions, do they not have enough applicants applying to the jobs? Or it could be that maybe we just need to shift recruiting resources from sales, marketing, and ops to sales to get them back on track and to balance out the forecast for the quarter. So let's say that your gut said, we have enough open positions in development, but I don't think we have enough people applying to those jobs. Well, then we would go to our recruiting team and our recruiting dashboards and ask that question about how many people are applying to jobs at Tableau. So this is a report that breaks down and helps us understand for the number of requisitions open by month. So these are the blue bars here on the upper left. How many people are applying? And so the number of applicants are the darker orange lines here, and then the lighter are forecast, which is a feature in Tableau. Those candidates that are applying are broken down below in the area chart based off of agency, directly recruited, events, employee referral, applicant, et cetera. So this helps us monitor the top of the recruiting funnel and understanding how many people are applying to jobs at Tableau. This dashboard pulls from Tableau, and we have a process set up that I'll explain later but this data refreshes every 90 minutes. So once I create this recruiting dashboard, as well as the next few that I'm going to share with you, it saves us a ton of time. So after I build them, they run, the data's live, which makes me be able to go and build additional dashboards. So of the total number of people applying, we like to monitor how many we actually hire. So this is our recruiting funnel dashboard that helps us understand of the number of applicants applying, how many make it to a phone screen, second phone screen, on-site interview, and how many are ultimately hired. So in this case, it's fake data. Of the 16,000 that applied, we hired 276. That detail is broken out below by quarter, and you can see that those percentages vary. And we can also break this down by department, job title, and actually down to the requisition number to help us answer that question of, do we not have enough applicants applying to a job? And when we see that we don't have enough applicants applying, it could be that we need to post the job to a different job board. It could be that we need to rewrite the job description. Or if we're seeing that, of the phone screen, second phone screen, on-site, let's say that the number of on-site interviews brought on, the higher percentage is really low. It could be that we're not bringing on the right type of people to our on-site interviews, and we could do a better job with our phone screens earlier in the funnel. So in that case, we might go back and recalibrate the questions that we're asking during our phone screens. So once we understand the total number of hires that we make, we then like to understand where they're coming from. So that would take us to a dashboard that breaks down the 276 people that we hired, where they were coming from. So if we look at the top bar chart here, you'll see that in this case, a lot came from employee referrals, and then the next major source was events, followed by those who are directly recruited, applicant, and agency. And as I hover over, let's say, employee referral, you'll see that it highlights the detail below by department and by location. And you can see that those percentages vary. So in the case of employee referrals, for development, ops, and sales, that percentage is pretty high. But for marketing, it appears to be a little bit lower. So in this case, we might want to look at events and say, here it's lower for development, but it's really high for marketing. So that's this orange dot here. So as a recruiter or a recruiting team, I can use this information to help me with my strategy. So if I were a marketing recruiter, I might throw more happy hours or other type of events than I might if I were a development recruiter. And then for each one of these sources, we actually have additional dashboards that break down further detail. But I'm going to focus on one, which is our employee referral dashboard, and further go into the detail behind our employee referral program. So on the top left here, you can see the total number of employee referrals that we've received by month, and the orange lines represent our average per quarter. On the top right, you can see our recruiters. So here's an example of 6 recruiters and how many referrals they've received but not resolved. And then down below, you can see those 6 recruiters broken down, and by quarter, the average number of days it takes them to respond to their referrals that they receive. So the reason why I chose to highlight and go into the detail behind this employee referral program is around this bottom average days to respond viz. So you can see, and this is a real example, that the average number of days decreased as time went on. And that was a true story, where we had received some feedback and asked that question of how long is it taking our recruiters to respond? We had employees that would ask, hey, I submitted an employee referral and I never heard back. Or someone would apply and they're like, I never heard from the recruiter. So we thought it would be interesting to look at how long it was taking our recruiters to respond. So we pulled together something that looked like this, and they could all see how they compared to one another. And it was amazing how much quicker they started responding once the data was visible. So the reason why I share this story is by making data transparent and sharing it, it changes behavior and it also holds people accountable for their actions. So looking at our recruiting team, this is one way that we kind of monitor their performance and their activity. But we also set goals for each one of our recruiters. So in this dashboard, you can see that there are 6 recruiters listed, and for each one of them, the blue bars represent their fills per month, and the orange represents their goal. And their goals vary, as you can see, and the goals are based off of their tenure at Tableau, type of open position, number of open positions, etc. So we set these goals to be realistic for each one of them to be able to achieve. So if we were to focus in on Allison, so that's the upper left person here, you can see that her number of fills, so her actual number of fills compared to her goal, is lower. So for the year, it's looking like she's going to come in under her goal. So as a manager on the recruiting team, I might sit down with Allison and say, hey, it looks like you're not quite hitting your goal. What's going on? Like, are your hiring managers not engaged? Have you, had a ton of offer declines? What's going on that's limiting you from hitting your goal? So let's say she comes back and says, I've had a ton of offer declines. Like, I have a lot of activity, my hiring managers are engaged, but I've had more offer declines recently than expected. So in that case, during your one-on-one, you might pull up this viz that looks at our offer acceptance rate. So in this viz, red represents the offers that have been declined, and green represents the offers that have been accepted. So in the area chart on the top, you can see that percent over time, and then that is broken out by detail for department, by title, and also by hiring manager. So let's say you care about Allison and you want to, further answer that question of has she had more offer declines than, previously or other recruiters. You could then filter down to Allison and pull open just her activity. And what you'll see is, let's say this is later in the year, so not halfway through the year. It does appear that there's been more red than previously. And maybe this red is greater than other recruiters. So that next question might be, well, is there any trend with job, title, group? Like, why are these people not accepting these jobs? So as we drill into the detail, which below each one of these squares represents an individual offer that we made. And as I click on it, you can see that it highlights the job title as well as the hiring manager below. So in this case, it's a senior software engineer under Cohen. And as I continue to click on these, you'll see that here's another software engineer under Nicholas, another software engineer, this one's also under Nicholas. So it looks like there's starting to be a trend with software engineers and with potentially Nicholas as a hiring manager. So the next question might be, well, why are these software engineer offers being declined? And maybe your gut tells you it's compensation. So that would lead us to the next dashboard, which is, are we paying competitively? But before I jump into that dashboard, I have another true story related to this dashboard, which was we were asked this question of, what's our offer acceptance rate? And I pulled it. It looked something like this, but it was literally almost all green. And we knew that we'd had some recent offers that were declined, so the data wasn't accurate. So we started looking into Tableau and understanding why we weren't capturing the offers that were declined. And what it turned out to be was that if someone declined an offer, a recruiter could pick that last stage as being that they rejected the client, or they rejected the candidate. So they were rejecting them as opposed to noting it as an offer declined. So in that case, we were able to change our business process in Tableau so that now, once an offer is extended, you either have to accept it or decline it. So now we're able to capture this detail and be able to answer that question. The reason why I chose to share this story is a lot of people, and I hear this a lot, say, I'm scared to visualize my data because I know it's not right, right? And we kind of had that fear when we started where it's like, it's a little scary to like put it up there and color it and look into it because your gut tells you that it's not quite clean enough. But there's no better way to clean your data and hold people accountable for what they're entering into systems than by creating dashboards, that highlight trends or where errors might be. So don't let the whole idea of not wanting to share data because it's not right limit you in creating these dashboards. So back to Allison and your gut of, for these software engineers, that question of, are we paying competitively? Like maybe it's compensation as a reason why they're declining. So from here, the recruiting team would work with the HR team to help answer that question. So this next dashboard helps us look at and answer that question of, are we paying competitively? So we use market data to help us benchmark our jobs. So in this dashboard, we have our software engineer job family. And for each one of these jobs, we have 3 locations highlighted here. And those green bands represent the market data from the 10th to the 90th percentile. The gray dots represent individual people. So as I hover over them, you can see their name, their title. You could add in other detail to these tooltips. And then you can also see here on the right, in this case, we've looked at what's that average delta from the 50th percentile. So really quickly, we're able to see kind of high-low what that average employee compensation is compared to the average at the 50th percentile for the market data. This dashboard pulls from 2 Excel spreadsheets. One is an active employee list with everyone's compensation. Another is a data download from our market salary survey company. And we join based off of job code as well as location. But in this case, let's say that a lot of those offer declines were around software engineers. So we can see that for Austin and Seattle, our employees more or less fall within the market data. And in fact, our average is very close to the 50th percentile. But for Palo Alto, there appears to be quite a few people that are even below the 10th percentile. So in this case, if those offers that were extended and declined were in line with those people that are already below market, compensation very well could be the reason why they declined those offers. So in this case, you would work with the compensation team to figure out what we need to do to potentially adjust these people, adjust our bands, or at least put it on their radar that they are underpaid. In addition to looking at market data, for compensation, we also like to understand for our active employees where they are as a percent in range. So our internal ranges are built off of not only market data, but our other internal employees and other jobs across Tableau. So the way we calculate it is if someone's within range, they fall between the 0 and the 100th percentile. So these are these gray lines here and here. And once again, each one of these dots represents a person. So you can see their name, their title, their location, their percentage. You could add in hire date. You could do a bunch of different things. But this dashboard comes in handy during 2 times. One is during our annual compensation review where we're looking at our internal bands. And if we were to add a different color scheme on here, let's say we color by hire date, and all of the 2016 hires are all falling at the high end or at the top, that could be an indication that we might need to adjust it up for the next year. Or if they're all at the bottom of the range, maybe we need to adjust it down. But it also comes in handy when we are going into our performance assessment process and looking at and understanding who's below and who's above for people that maybe we need to, give a larger bump than normal to or potentially promote into that next level. Another important part of someone's total compensation at a company is benefits. And we all know that benefits are very expensive. So we like to understand our costs and how they compare to other tech companies as well as to our prior years. We partner with our benefits broker to get this data, and we then visualize it using Tableau. This is one example of how we are looking at benefits, but we have a lot of other dashboards that help us understand our trends by month, trends by prescription drugs, trends across all sorts of different cuts of data. But this comes in handy also when we're looking and working with our finance team and making sure that they have the best numbers to put into their financial models. One of the most recent dashboards that we built out was around what employees are asking the HR team. So we started looking at all the tickets that were submitted to our HR team and breaking them down by type that were submitted, and then detail by department, as well as who on the HR team is closing those tickets. So you can see the number that were asked around 401k, employee information, training, benefits, so kind of all the major themes within HR. And you'll see that the number one ticket here is around 401k. So let's filter down to 401k and drill into this detail. So another true story at Tableau is we pulled this data, and 401k actually was our number one ticket type. Well, that's a program that I run, and I had no idea. So this was probably the biggest aha moment that I had when pulling data. You know, I see the tickets that come through, but I actually had no idea that it was the number one ticket submitted. So in this case, and I haven't done it yet, I'm planning to do this after TC, but my next step is to dive into those tickets and understand what people are asking. So let's say I'm back from TC and I'm looking at this dashboard. Once again, each one of these squares below represents data. So you can, or an individual ticket. And there's that short description there. So you can see the first one is, how do I enroll? How do I look up my balance? What are my investment options? How often can I change them? How much can I contribute? So there's a lot of different themes going on with what people are asking. So I don't know whether that's the case or not. I'm actually really excited to look into those short descriptions. But the ultimate goal of why we decided to pull this data was so that we can either provide better information during our onboarding process. You know, maybe it's more educational opportunities or trainings on site, or it could be that we just need additional information on our wiki page. But the ultimate goal is making sure that employees have the information that they need at their fingertips so they're not forced to submit tickets to HR to be able to quickly answer their own questions. So we are trying to improve our employee experience through looking at our tickets. Another dashboard that we use on our HR team is around our organizational structure. So in this dashboard, we're looking at the number of direct reports per manager. So each one of these lines represents a manager in each of our 4 business units. So you can see that the averages vary by business units, but if we were to focus in on development here, where the average is 2.7, where this comes in handy is our HR business partners would look at these high ones, like in this case, Avery, Haley, and maybe Nolan, and work with managers and other people to ask the question of, does it make sense that they have so many direct reports? Should we reallocate employees to other managers? You know, it does look in this case like we have a lot of managers with just one direct report. But how do we need to set our employees and our managers up for success and make sure that everyone has the best experience? So we would ask those questions, and maybe we need to do a reorg, maybe we need to open additional manager positions, but we are proactively working with our groups around our organizational structure and making sure that both employees and managers are happy. All right, performance assessments, everyone's favorite topic these days, and I'm sure many of you are heading into the PA season. But this is a very ugly Excel spreadsheet image. And Tableau, probably like many companies out there, still collect our merit and our equity recommendations in Excel. So at the end of the recommendation collection process, I end up with a spreadsheet like this. And you can imagine at Tableau size, at the end of last year, we had close to 3,000 employees. So this is about 3,000 rows long, about 50 columns wide. Probably looks familiar to some of you. And I would have to go to our exec team for approval. And that would be a lot of pivot tables, filtering, sorting, you know, let me follow up with that question, like let me come back to you type of thing. And inevitably, the approval process took a long time. So we decided to take this Excel spreadsheet and put it into Tableau. I'm going to show you 3 of the dashboards that we used to help us understand what was going on with this spreadsheet. So this first dashboard helps us look at our merit increase recommendations. The y-axis here is our average increase, and the x-axis is our PA score scale, or performance assessment scale. So at Tableau, we have a scale between 1 and 5. 5's not meeting expectations, 3 is meeting expectations, and then 5 is exceeding. So you can see at a very high level quickly that due to these reference bands here, that the average increase is increasing as performance improves. So that high-level gut check checks out where our merit recommendations, align to performance. In addition, each one of those dots represents an individual person. So we can quickly see who the outliers are. And in this case, this green dot up here jumps out at me, and as I hover over it, I can see the detail. So quickly I'm able to see that for Kale, he's on the sales team, but he's not changing jobs, he's remaining in IC. He's up for a 100% merit recommendation, and notes include strong performance, great job landing accounts. So at first glance, it does not seem, due to those notes and due to the fact that he's changing jobs, that 100% makes sense. And it could very well be that someone fat-fingered something in a spreadsheet. We all know that that happens. So in this case, I was able to quickly see that outlier and then go back to that manager or whoever made that recommendation and ask that question of, was that an error? Another one could be Royce here, once again in sales, but he is moving from an IC to a manager, and his notes include great performance, taking on a larger role next year. So in this case, maybe the compensation and the merit recommendation make sense for his next role. And as we, maybe these ones that are receiving a negative increase jump out, once again, you might think that's an error. But as we hover over it, here's one with Molly, where, she's moving to a different role, lower quota, that one might make sense. So in that case, or this one's, the compensation recommendation aligns to the new role. So in some of these, we can quickly answer that question, and depending on whether or not we think it makes sense, we can go back and ask additional questions or move on. In addition to that, we can look and ask those same questions for, development, which at first glance, it looks like, once again, that average increase goes up as performance improves. There don't seem to be too many outliers. But as we continue to filter, you can see that for marketing, and this is not what happened with marketing last year, but when we see things like this, where our average increase in this case goes down as performance improves, we clearly need to have a conversation, as this doesn't seem to check out. So when we see things like this, Tableau provides a great canvas to go back to that leader and have a data-driven conversation. So it's, hey, you might not have seen this in that spreadsheet, but look at what's going on. Does this make sense? Do we need to make adjustments to scores? Do we need to make adjustments to merit recommendations? But having Tableau really leads to a great conversation quickly. So in addition to looking at merit, we looked at equity within Tableau. So equity is stock, and as a public company, we give out stock during our annual performance time. So in this case, we looked at the equity value recommendations based off of their on-target earnings. So these are these scatter plots that are once again colored by our PA scale. And you can see the outliers. You can hover over them to see who they are in the detail. But what we've also built into this dashboard is a parameter. And right now, all of these values are based off of a stock price of $50. So I would frequently get asked, well, what happens if our stock price change? And once again, rather than go back, rebuild it into the Excel spreadsheet, I'm able to quickly answer that question by changing this parameter. So I'm going to pick someone here. Let's say I pick Josephine Moore. So right now, she's up for a $78,000 recommendation. And as I change the stock price, let's change it to, $75. You can see that everything adjusted below. And now, as I hover over that same person, you can see that the equity value increased. So we were able to make real-time adjustments, modeling our stock expense through parameters that we built into these dashboards. In addition to that, I would frequently get asked a question, such as, what about Bob? Like they have a particular person on the top of their head that they want to be able to pick out of this dashboard. So if I were to answer that question, what about Bob? You can see that all the Bobs pop up below. So I can see across Tableau how Bob Best compares to Bob Green, compares to Bob Beard. So you can start to see how quickly it is to be able to pull out individual people as well as see that high-level trend. So Wildcard is a great feature that allows you to quickly answer those questions. The third dashboard that we built was around our performance score distribution. So this is a pretty simple dashboard here, which looks at the number of people per PA score. So you can see, it's just a simple bell curve here with a label of the distribution. But the reason why I chose this one is it was simple, yet probably one of the most powerful dashboards that we used because it once again was data that people couldn't see in their spreadsheet. And when we saw things where people were scoring either really high or skewing low, we were able to go back to them and say, okay, does this make sense? Why are you giving everyone on your team lower than a 3? Like, have you really, is it true that everyone's not performing, or are you not aware of how, our scale works at Tableau? Maybe they're a new manager. So we were able to have those conversations, once again, using data. So I want to encourage, those of you who are newer to Tableau to not be scared to build out really simple dashboards, because sometimes they're the most powerful. So don't be scared to start. Start with something basic, because even the most basic, simple dashboards can lead to great insight. So at the end of the employee life cycle, when they leave, we like to understand why they're leaving. So this is our high-level attrition summary that helps us understand our turnover year to date and how that compares to previous years. So on the far left, you can see these lines that represent our turnover by year, and then those are broken down by department and by region. So let's say that you're in the beginning of 2016, and you're looking at this red line here. You can see that year to date it's 7, which at first glance appears to be higher than at that point in previous years. But what you can also see is that you ended the previous year lower than other years. So in this case, you might ask the question of, was it a timing thing? Are people leaving in January versus December, or something else going on? Maybe this isn't a trend for the whole year, but let's look into it and dive into that question. So that would take us to our detailed attrition summary, which breaks down our termination data by voluntary and involuntary. So that's these orange and blue bars here on the upper right, as well as helping us understand our average headcount balance per month and kind of that monthly turnover rate. The bottom represents the involuntary-voluntary split over time, and in this case, it's roughly 50-50. So if we were to go back to the previous dashboard and ask the question of, is it a timing thing of why people are leaving in January versus December, we can look at this spike in January where it does appear that we have 43 voluntary terms. So in this case, the next question might be, well, why are they leaving? So as we look at that attrition detail, in this tab here, you can see the detail for those 43. And let's filter so that this text is a little bit bigger and focus in on another opportunity, commute time, and compensation. So in this case, this is a crosstab. It's not a dashboard, yet we're able to get insight from it. So for another opportunity, it appears that it's across, there's no one from sales, mostly dev, and a lot of them are home office. So, maybe you might want to look into your home office program. Maybe it's better to bring them into your office. Maybe that's a better work environment for them. For commute time, here are 3 out of the LA office reporting into Sherry. So there seems to be a trend there. So that next question would be, did you just recently relocate your LA office? Do you need to start letting your other LA employees work from home? Or, maybe Sherry's not a great manager, and then you could dive into that detail. Same thing could go for compensation, where you'll notice that for most of those folks, they're out of the New York office and have all been there about 4 years. So when we see something like this, that would take us back to that compensation dashboard where we were looking at our active employees compared to the market and ask that question of, are we paying competitively in New York? So another story around this turnover data, and this is a real story, is we were capturing in Workday, the term date and the basic term reasons of voluntary versus involuntary. But we were starting to get asked questions around themes, notes, what's going on. And we were capturing that data through our exit interviews, but then that data would be stored in someone's personnel file. So we had the data spread, all throughout the HR file system, so we weren't able to answer that question quickly. So we recently made an update in Workday where we now capture all of our exit interview notes within our system so that we're easily able to report on the themes and be able to answer that question of what's going on much, much faster. All right, so how do we connect to all this data? I'm going to show you 2 ways that we are doing it in addition to just using our spreadsheets and Excel files. And the first one is how we're getting our data out of Workday. So we've been with Workday about a year now, and we recently started using Alteryx to help us pull the data out. So Alteryx is providing that bridge between Workday and Tableau for us. So in this case, I'm going to walk you through this workflow where I start in Workday and I create a report. From there, I enable it to be run as a web service, and I pick an output. In this case, I picked a URL. So I copy that URL link, I insert the text here. I then, through this little icon, which is the gray one, called Data Connector, I'm able to enter my login credentials. That then calls the data out of Workday, puts it into Alteryx. I do a couple text-to-column transformations, filter, rename the column headers, and I'm either able to create a Tableau published data source on Tableau server, or I'm able to push the data somewhere else to maybe another file share system. This is one where I've scheduled this data and this workflow to run every day at 5:05. So I'm able to pull that data out of Workday and to put it into Tableau into Tableau automatically. Where we've found this handy is with Workday and how permissions are set up. A recent example was our workplace team needed to know how many people were using our commuter subsidy benefit so that they could manage who was getting that benefit versus parking. And we weren't able to open up all of our benefits in Workday without exposing medical and dental and other things that we don't want that team to be able to use. So I was able to create a benefit report in Workday with just what I wanted them to see, run it through this workbook. They are able to now join this with their parking list, build a validator in Tableau to see, who's receiving both, who's not receiving any. But it really helped us get the data into, the hands of the right people. And this helped streamline that process and save a ton of time. Another workflow that we're using is for our Taleo data. So this one's slightly different, but it's the same basic concept of extract, transform, load, or ETL. So in this case, we have 3 really large reports out of Taleo. They kind of capture all the data that we want to be able to report on, from interviews, requisitions, and candidates. From there, we pull it and we basically publish it to a SQL server that then every 90 minutes get posted to Alpo. Alpo is our Tableau server. We call it Alpo because we like to eat our own dog food. One of our core values is that we use our own product, so that's how it got its name. But through this workflow, we have created happy customers, and happy employees because we have easy access to our data. I am next going to go through 3 types of security that we are using. And what I want you to take away from this is Tableau has tools in the product that allow you to be able to securely distribute this information. So this first one is a view of permissions in our Tableau server. So when I create a workbook that I want to publish, I'd go up here, I'd go to server, and I'd publish that workbook. And from there, I'd get a user interface that would look like this. And I can control settings by user group or by individual for who can view, interact, and edit. And where I really like this is for certain people, I don't care if they can download the data. I know that they have, the right credentials set up. But for others, I maybe don't even want them to be able to filter down or view the underlying data. So this allows me to control what people are doing and how they're interacting with the data. So an example of how I would use this is we have a massive spreadsheet of compensation rates on our team. And we know that those rates need to get into the hands of the right people across a variety of different business units and groups. So rather than sending out Excel spreadsheets, maybe weekly with any rates that have been updated or, having a bunch of spreadsheets floating out there, I'm able to publish those compensation rates to Tableau server and then lock down by group who I want to see them. So this really allows me to securely distribute that information and once again make sure it gets in the hands of the right people. We also have permissions set at the database level. So in this case, our database level permissions sync with our Active Directory, and our IT team manages those permissions. So in the example of Taleo, where we were creating a database with that Taleo data, we were able to control who can see that Taleo data and making sure that people can't access it who don't have the right login credentials. User-based permissions are also another way to make sure that certain teams, users, or individuals have access to the right data using their login credentials. So in this case, you can create a filter with username. And in this case, I picked my own name, but you could also pick a group. And then you can add that filter, which pulls up a true or false. You can add that filter at the very beginning, so that data source tab, you can add it. And then that filter will be on the entire workbook. You can also add it at the worksheet level. But this is another way to control who can see what data within a workbook. So the dashboards that I showed you have evolved over time, and we continue to iterate on them based off of additional questions and additional business needs. But overall, we've improved our data integrity, our efficiency, which has led to better informed decisions about our people. Before Tableau, I had never gone through this data journey with another tool like Excel. But Tableau really makes it easy to go on this data journey and ask and answer questions quickly and also make better insights into what's going on. So I hope that what I showed you inspired you to ask a question, build a dashboard to help you better understand your people. With that, I'll open it up to Q&A. Okay, so we have a few. We'll have time for everyone. We've got 15 minutes. So I'll start in the front and then go to the back.
With your budget data, is that baked into your core HR system, or do you work with your finance partner to kind of like pull that in?
So I work with our finance partner to pull that in. So I have it by department, and then I create a calculated field. I do a dual axis, and then I make that a Gantt chart. Oh, the question was for that headcount tracking and forecasting viz, that first one that I showed. I'll go to it. Were the budget numbers baked into our HRIS system? And that answer was no. I actually got a report from our finance team by department. I'd create a calculated field. I'm able to do a dual axis and then make a Gantt chart from it. Does that help?
I didn't see it
We have other survey results. Oh, so the question was, I didn't see a dashboard around employee survey results. We don't do wide-based employee surveys, so we don't have one specifically for that, but we have done benefit surveys in the past, and we have used Tableau to help us understand those results. And we do surveys for our candidate experience. So I have a whole dashboard on the candidate experience and what they thought of our process. So we do use Tableau for survey results, and it's a great way to visualize it. Right here?
I noticed that a lot of your trends that you're looking at in the forecast have a lot of seasonality to them. Are you looking at using like a more seasonal forecast for things like turnover and hiring?
So I think that was just how I built, so the question was around seasonality with the data. So this was all fake data. So if there,
We all work with HR data, right?
Yeah.
So we all have like tiny, we don't really have big data, we have little data, right?
Mhm.
Because the number of people that are in our organizations are small, and doing something like a forecast is just basically a moving average to statistically significant.
right.
Perspective of trying to forecast your headcount, your turnover trends, for example, are you out external to this dashboard? Are you at Tableau doing some kind of like seasonal forecasting for hiring and attrition? And if so, like how does Tableau support that?
So yes, I would say we are aware of quarterly or monthly kind of trends with seasonality. And so we are baking that through. In a lot of these dashboards, those orange bars or our forecast was actually another forecast that was joined from like an Excel spreadsheet of which we are keeping that forecast data. So we're not using the Tableau forecast feature. Not yet, no. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. Yeah. Right here?
Do you slice your data by either job hierarchy or by say, race ethnicity yet? And if you do, would you add it as a drop-down, a filter, or would you slice it some different kind of way in your dashboard? The job hierarchy is like VP plus director.
Yeah. So we have, so for the job levels, a lot of times I'll do a drop down just so I can compare just that subset at one time, or I'll build in a hierarchy so that I can quickly expand or go down on it. Same with like location hierarchies. With regards to the race ethnicity, I would recommend looking at it, like would that be around percentages or pay?
Percentages of like either sales category or percentages of anything else, how it breaks down.
Yeah, so would we have looked at it, we do, once again, bar charts where we'll do as a 100% scale, and then we'll just do percentages with 3 different colors. Another way that you can do it, how I've seen it done, would be, if you're interested in like pay across gender or pay across race, ethnicity, we found that you could, pick a job title, break down, male, female, and do this same, employee dots and look at averages for, where males might be higher or females might be higher. So you could almost use this same graph to help you understand that. So sometimes it helps to see them one line above the other with kind of how the averages stack up. Does that help you?
Yes.
Right here?
Or you talk about very frequently refreshing current data.
Yes.
You also have time. How do you store your data so you can use that analysis?
So some is live. So all of our recruiting, that's all live. So we don't do really any historical trending on a lot of that recruiting data. For HR, we do snapshots. So every Friday we do a snapshot. So we're able to do kind of all the historical trending. So we have it updated every Friday for our HR data. Yeah. In the back? So the question's around, do we do behavioral assessments before hiring? No, we do background checks. So, yeah. All right here?
Do you use some form of LMS system and kind of after succession and leadership?
So we actually don't have an LMS right now. We have that data stored in a lot of Excel files. We're looking at it, and we're actually looking at Workday's LMS system. So we pull it in by person based off of like their job ID for like what classes they've attended, trends there. So we kind of join once again based off of employee ID if we want to pull that data into Tableau. Yeah. I don't know. We were on ADP before Workday, and we just did Excel dumps. Yeah.
Your HR users have the access to your dashboard?
Do our HR users have access? Yes, they do.
So are there like open to all the information, or is it like a low level security?
Sometimes we use role level security, and sometimes depending on the information, they're able to see it all. There are dashboards that I don't share that like I have in my personal file, like that PA data, where I won't send that or I won't publish that because that is highly sensitive. So in that case, I'll set up a meeting and I'll just use Tableau as that framework to have a conversation. Does that help? In the very back? Sorry, can you? I think it can be both. I'm not a security expert. There's a ton of information on our website. We use Tableau. What it is? Yeah. Okay. The question was around row-based security and whether it's at the server level or at the database level, and the answer it appears to be it can be set up as both. And your second question? The people that can see the benefit data have all signed HIPAA waivers and gone through HIPAA training. So once again, that's something that we would not publish out, as we would not want our server admins to see that data. So we keep that more secure, but we do want to understand it using Tableau.
When you were building your security, did you actually collaborate with somebody in your security team to figure out how to roll out the user groups?
We do, yeah. We collaborate with them all the time on it, and to make sure that we're kind of staying up to date. We do audits with them and other things to make sure that, they're on top of it, basically.
Are you the publisher of all your dashboards and what those user filters or is that something?
That is me. We do, and then we have other people on our team that actually do create dashboards, and they publish also. So, yeah, multiple people are publishing to our HR and our recruiting folder on server.
And who gives you the download rights?
Usually people in HR. So I usually rarely give full download rights to. Some of our execs have download rights. Right here? We have, so the question's around Alteryx and what version we're on. We have Alteryx server. Mm-hmm. You're back there? So the question's around our workflow and getting data out of Taleo. So no, there's not a direct connection from Tableau into Taleo. So we have to go through the process of running reports, pulling it out, and then pushing it to SQL Server to get it. And we set that refresh every 90 minutes. We didn't see the need to run it more frequently than that. Right here?
Having conversations with individuals about their security. Do you ever have cross-department conversations like multiple teams at a conference table and problems maybe that are solved with individual teams?
Yeah.
Mostly one-on-one conversations.
Sure. So the question's around when I'm sitting down and having the conversations, who's involved with them. So it's one, a lot of times it's an individual, but we have started, it is the start of looking at all of our compensation rates for next year. So there have been times when we have a job across multiple business units, and I've had a couple recent meetings where I'll pull them all together and just look at it and say, does this make sense with kind of a bigger scope? But usually that's just with our top execs who can see that data across other business units. Right here?
You mentioned you refresh your basically and master data at 5:05 every night, and then you do snapshots on every Friday.
So the commuter subsidy data, that Alteryx workflow, that one runs every day at 5:05.
Okay. So everything else is on a weekly.
So we reconcile every Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. For the rest of it.
You have a diverse dashboard?
We have not released our diversity, so the question's around diversity metrics. We have not released our diversity metrics yet, so once again, we understand what they are, but it's not a public workbook. But we do use Tableau to understand where we're at. The very back? Yeah, so the question's around like LOA and do we have any dashboards built around that? And the answer is yes. So we have like a leave of absence tracker that our HR team manages of people, date expected back, whether it's paid, unpaid, kind of all that typical LOA data that you would capture. And where we use Tableau is we actually have created a workbook that we have different tabs for different groups, because we know that the payroll team needs to know some LOA data. Our stock team needs to know another set of the data. Our commissions team needs to know another set. So we actually create different views and publish it up as a way to distribute that information to other teams. But right now, they're just simple cross tabs, and we use Tableau as a way to distribute that data.
You have a blend in there in the multiple dashboard of storytelling in the backend because you have multiple data sources?
I have a ton of data sources, yeah.
So they're all blended. Is that what you're doing in the dashboard?
So they're all different dashboards here that are here, and then if I go up to data, you can see all the different data sources. So some are joined, some are not joined. And that's how I built it here. Within how we actually use Tableau is not one big story. So I do have individual workbooks, but I chose to present it in this way. Question?
Do you do anything with variable pay or incentives or finance?
In terms of looking at it or tracking it?
Yeah, tracking it or calculating Tableau to do that.
We have a commissions tool that helps us calculate our variable pay. So we have another system that does that. We just keep track of someone's target commissions, and then we provide that data to the commissions team, and then within their tool, they do it based off of actual bookings, et cetera. But I'm pretty sure that they're using Tableau also. Any other questions? Well, I will be here for the next 10 minutes, so if you do have questions, feel free to come up to me. If not, enjoy the keynote.